What's going on, guys? What's going on, Thai Squad? What's going on, everybody? So, the OKC Thunder lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves 143 to 100. And my thoughts of this game is this game was very close. This game wasn't very close than any other game. This was just a dominating game by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like, you cannot say anything about it because they were down 2-0 going into game 3. And it's hard to come back down 2-0. It's very hard to come back 2-0. And I think we all remember that Anthony Edwards left game 1 at the box score. We all remembered that. We all remembered that he was asked a question after losing game 1, and he laughed at the box score. At the box score with Julius Randle. And I think when Minnesota went back home, is that they needed to win game 3. Because if you don't win game 3, you are basically out of the playoffs. I mean, you're down 3-0, and the winner of 3-0, it's hard to come back. It's definitely hard to come back. And the last team that we saw come back from a 3-0 deficit was the 2016 Cavs in the finals. And I'm going to say this, is that with Anthony Edwards scoring 30, with Julius Randle scoring 24, I do not know why they would both laugh in the press conference game 1 at the box score game 1. I do not get that because we see smiles, we see players happy, we see players laughing all the time and joking all the time. But I think something was up after game 1 when we saw Anthony Edwards laugh in the press conference. I knew he knew because we seen a Brown laugh when Klay Thompson said a comment. So I think when Minnesota was down 3-0, we could all see that when Minnesota was down 2-0, we could all see that this Minnesota Timberwolves team was going to come back somehow. Somehow, some way, this Minnesota Timberwolves team would come back like the last time, like last year in the playoffs for the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was the 20th anniversary when the last time the Minnesota Timberwolves made the West Conference Finals with a team in Kevin Garnett, Sam Cassell, all of those guys. So last year it had been 20 years. And now we're sitting here today talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves back in the conference finals for a second time. And I think that with this Minnesota Timberwolves team, they lost a couple games in the regular season. They made that big move to get Julius Randle for Karl Anthony Towns, which is still surprising to me, but I am going to say this, is that when you have a superstar in Anthony Edwards that's going to drop 30 points, you hold him to 18 points in the last two games. He didn't shoot the basketball that good in the last two games. I think OKC really didn't make that much adjustments going into game 3 than they did game 2, game 1, and game 2. I think Minnesota probably went with a different lineup coming off the bench. Like, I think the Minnesota's coach had a better game plan to do something like this to win a game, and that's what we saw. We saw how Minnesota wasn't going to get run over. We saw how how they would be the factor to win game 3. Like when you're up 7, when you score 100 points, when you're up 100, when you put up 100 points in the third quarter and a team only has 50 or 60 at that time, I can't remember what the score was now, but it was something like that. But when you have Minnesota dominating like that, there is a big question. Are you okay with Minnesota dominating OKC? OKC has the MVP in Shea. And you hold them to 18 points. We get that. But when we look back at this game, we're going to say that the Minnesota Timberwolves put up 143 points. I don't know if they were just ready to get back to Minnesota and win game 3, or they just really didn't show up and Anthony Edwards didn't have his best 2 games, or it went the opposite, because we seen how Minnesota this year beat the Los Angeles Lakers, beat the Warriors. We seen last year how Minnesota beat the Phoenix Suns, tried to beat Dallas last year. So we know what this team has. This team has a different roster this year. This team has a different roster. This team isn't going to back down from any sort problem, because when we look at this, we can say that Minnesota wasn't playing around this game and that they were just on another level and on another tear, because when you're on another level and on another tear like Minnesota was last night, when you're on a tear and how Minnesota was last night in this playoff game, you could say that Minnesota dominated. You can say that Minnesota came out with a lot of energy. Like they had the home crowd and behind them the whole time. Like Devin Chenzo stepped up. Julius Randle stepped up. Mike Conley stepped up. When you got like a veteran point guard that been in the playoffs his whole career, and Mike Conley has been there. When you got a young star in Anthony Edwards that will probably be the face of the league someday, that is only 23 years old and still coming up like that and taking his game to another level, to learn from Steph, to learn from LeBron in the Olympics, that's another level. To take his game to another level, that we're seeing Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves do, it's just something that we haven't seen from different players. Like we seen LeBron take his game to another level, how to be a playmaker. We seen Steph take his game, seen Steph change the game. We seen Devin Booker change his game, take his game to another level. We seen Chris Paul over the years take his game to another level. That is what we're seeing from Anthony Edwards and how he is becoming the face of the league, becoming a player that is taking his game to another level, that is taking his game to another level, that wants to win, that wants to put his team in the playoffs every year, that wants to be the best and also beat the best, because we saw him last year beat saying Kevin Durant, put Kevin Durant out of the playoffs. We saw this year him beating LeBron in the first round of the playoffs. We seen like him do it all, and you are going to score 30 points. 30 points. 30 points on a scoring night where there isn't like nothing that you can do to stop Anthony Edwards or to stop Julius Randle from hitting easy money buckets and getting Jam City dunks, because what Minnesota has is Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, and Anthony Edwards. You have a big three right there. Like last year, Minnesota had Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. Last year, I think Minnesota was so close to getting there, to getting to the finals, because you had almost a two-headed. You ran two centers, almost like a Akeem and Simpson, like the Rockets, like the '90 Rockets did, where you have two centers in the starting lineup, but that didn't work out because now we see how Julius Randle is playing with the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're seeing how Anthony Edwards took his game to another level. And for the OKC side of things, you play good defense against Shea, against Chet, like against Dort, against these guys that had the number one seed all year long, and now you're saying we want to beat these guys. And that is like, I think for Minnesota, that's the goal to do that. But honestly, like the way that Minnesota played last night is totally different. The way that they played game two, the way that they played game one against OKC. If you could like figure out how to play good defense like you did on Shea last night in game three, you could, if that's going to be the factor where Minnesota switches up their lineup or OKC does that, I would say that this, it's going to go either way right now because OKC is up 2-1 right now, and we don't know what else Minnesota can do because with the teams that we're looking at that has the best window to do that is Minnesota because Minnesota right now, if I was down Minnesota, if they were down, is what I'm trying to say. If they were down 15 last night, if they were down 15, is what I'm trying to say. If they were down 15 last night, they would have lost that game last night if OKC was up 15 last night. If OKC won this game and Shea had a good game and Chet had a good game and Anthony Edwards just had a decent game, I would say OKC could have won that along if they played good defense and good offense. But on the other side of things, you gotta look at it as, okay, OKC wasn't the better team last night. They lost the game because they let Minnesota score 100 in the third quarter. They let Minnesota just take the whole momentum in this game and not look back. Because you can't let a team that scores 100 on you and you only score 50, you can't let that happen. You just definitely can't let that happen because you know that Minnesota isn't going back down. I wouldn't be surprised if game 4 Minnesota shows up with the same mindset. I wouldn't be surprised because then we're looking at, okay, maybe OKC can push this to 7 games. I mean, maybe Minnesota can push this to 7 games and not get and not get and not lose in 5. Because if Minnesota doesn't win the next 2 games, we could all say that OKC is going to the finals. That is what we can say and look at, because OKC, to me, is built like a finals team. They're built like an NBA finals team that isn't going to back down. That isn't going to say, okay, we're going back down now because we lost game 3. No, they're not backing down. They're going to hit easy money buckets. They're going to hit easy money buckets. They're going to get Jerem City dunks. They're going to get all of that and I think OKC is going to bring the energy. And I do think that OKC will possibly win game 3 unless they can get a win here, because if you're able to get a win against a Minnesota Timberwolves team that basically said, hey, we're not backing down. We know you won the first 2 games. Like, they have all the momentum and all the energy to put this in to a game. And I don't think Minnesota isn't going back down. I don't think the Timberwolves are going back down. Because they got Anthony Edwards. They got Julius Randle. I definitely think that Julius Randle, if we see the Minnesota Timberwolves go to the NBA Finals and we see Anthony Edwards holding up that MVP in the West Conference, then it is like we're going to say that Anthony Edwards is the face of the league, is the face of the league. Because you can't let somebody that is so talented in Anthony Edwards, no matter how talented Anthony Edwards is, he's one day going to be the face of the league. It's going to come down to, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who's the face of the league. Because now when LeBron retires, I know I'm getting off topic here. When LeBron retires, there's going to be talks who's going to be the face of the league. And we're going to say Anthony Edwards should be one of them. And I could see why again, him and Julius Randle was laughing after game one at the box score because they possibly knew that they were going to win game three at their home court. Because if you're able, like, let's just check the box scores. You let Anthony Edwards score 30 on OKC. Julius Randle scored 24. In the first quarter, you let Minnesota score 34 points in the first quarter, and OKC only scored 14. You let in the second quarter, OKC scored 27, and you let Minnesota score 38. Third quarter, you let OKC score 29 points, and you let Minnesota score 35. And then you would let Minnesota in the fourth quarter score 36 points, and only OKC would score 31. And the final score would be 143 to 101. Like, when we look at the box score and look at both of these games and look how many points Anthony Edwards had, Julius Randle, Shea had, we could put this in a perspective and say that with the team stats, like the Minnesota Timberwolves shot 57.3% from the field last night. And OKC shot 40% from the field. And the Thunder shot 31 3-point shots, while Minnesota shot 50. OKC got to the line more than the Minnesota Timberwolves. But guys, sub if you're new and never give up your dreams. And I hope all of you guys are safe out there. And stay blessed, everybody. And peace.